Hello, everybody. I wanted to welcome you to the webinar, Insights and Strategies to Build Self-Advocacy Skills for School and Life. I'm your host and moderator, Sharona Summer, and I serve as the Director of Learning and Development at CIP. Founded in 1984 as one of the first abilities-based programs of its kind, CIP is one of the world's most highly recognized transition programs serving neurodiverse young adults. We are committed to providing superior transition services and outcomes for the families we serve, with the core purpose of empowering our students to reach their full potential. We achieve significant positive outcomes year after year with the help of our knowledgeable, multidisciplinary team of professionals that facilitate and support our students' path to success in college, employment, and independent living. And today, I'm very happy to present and to welcome our two presenters today that are those wonderful professionals that serve our students at CIP. We'll start with Crystal Hayes. Crystal Hayes holds a master's degree in special education and has 20 years of experience working in various areas of education with students from K through adult. And currently she's the program director for our CIP Long Beach location. And we also have Michele Ramsay. She holds a doctorate in education administration and leadership with over 25 years of professional experience working with divergent students, families, and school districts. She serves as CIP Brevard's program director as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll get started.
Thank you, Sharona. We very much appreciate that warm welcome. Okay, let's jump right on in here today. So welcome again to today's presentation on self-advocacy. As we begin, I'm going to like to kind of get you mentally into this subject. Think about your biggest need for today. So when you plan to attend this workshop, maybe you had to ask for time off of work, I don't know, maybe you extended your lunch break, you had to find a child sitter, whatever it might be. Did you appropriately advocate for that need the first time? Or maybe you had to adjust your approach to get really what you wanted. So as we go through today's presentation, think about those times that you advocated and maybe you didn't get what you wanted. Well, hopefully today you're going to discover a few tips and tricks to make that approach much more successful. So in fact, I'd like to ask this very question to my co-host. Hi, Crystal.
Hi, Michelle.
Crystal, did you advocate for anything today that you might have needed?
It's interesting that you ask because here on the West Coast, it's still morning. And I walked out of my house this morning. I went out to get in my car and there was somebody parked behind my car in my driveway. So I did have to advocate there, and I can't say that my first response was the best. I had a brief moment of panic. But I did finally ask a few neighbors for help, seeing if I could find out whose car that was and getting them to move it. Unfortunately, I didn't have luck. So I knew I was running late for a meeting. I stopped that search. I called an Uber and made it to work this morning. But I'll be honest, if that had happened years ago when I was in high school or college, I would have had no idea what to do because Uber did not exist back then.
Right? You're totally different support team. We've changed our support teams over the years.
Absolutely.
That's for sure. Well, thank you for sharing that story because that really helps showing that you had to go through multiple steps today to really get what you needed. It certainly wasn't something that you were going to handle on your own. So hopefully we can dive into a little bit more breaking that down, especially as we're going to serve a different population. Which brings me to talking about the audience we're going to talk about today. So we're assuming right now the audience mostly on the screen is professionals, it's parents. So we're going to speak to you as that support team, that person that's going to be there for the student and hopefully give you some ideas that you can help in coaching them. So please note right now on the screen on your right-hand side, there is a continuum of growth. This chart is really important, and this is a chart that we rely heavily on when we're trying to get a student to go through the different steps to make sure that they're prepared for the teachings and coachings that they're accepting. Are they really at that level to grow from it? So if I look at the very first one, right? So in order to ask for what I want or need, I really need to look at what that self-awareness is. That makes things much easier when I can identify what my weaknesses are and I can put that into place to get through a situation. I'll give you an example. So let's say your child has a writing issue like dysgraphia, and he has an English class that requires a lot of note-taking to get that homework done. Well, if he doesn't have some kind of writing support, he's probably going to struggle throughout the entire class. So self-aware, we're going to start right there, and that takes time. It also takes a lot of self-reflection. Otherwise, we will see that student struggling over and over. We see anger, we see the trouble they could possibly get into because they can't self-identify on what the issue is. So I don't know what I'm talking about. How am I going to ask for help? And that's going to really, on this slide, look at these two major terms. So even before we get to self-advocacy, we are looking at that self-awareness. But to reach self-advocacy, that's when your child understands that maybe then taking those notes is going to be a challenge due to their dysgraphia. And now he knows that he might need voice recognition software, like maybe Dragon Dictation or Google Speak. That's going to help him take those notes more easily. So for example, he might have to go up to his teacher and let them know the trouble he's having, specifically how that affects his education, what types of tools are going to help make him successful. Now that teacher has a choice now, right? They can either accept that accommodation or they can simply say no. And we know that that has happened in the past. And then that's where we coach the student on additional resources they may have to advocate to get the support that they need to get what they want. So in high school, that might be your case manager. In college, that might be the disabilities office. But as you know, through these countless years of working with your children and helping them or your clients, avocation is one of those components to make them successful. And that's one of the ones that we also want them to do independently, because there's going to be so many situations and circumstances where they're going to feel embarrassed or awkward about their learning difference. But that's when their advocacy skills are even more important to get that accommodation. Therefore, so really as any skill, it's going to take a lot of practice. And as you can see, we're going to ask you to be coaches. We're going to ask you to really focus on that self-reflection and help that, whether student or client, identify what they need and make sure they can do that clearly. So Crystal, can you speak a little bit more to maybe the different settings that is required for self-advocacy?
Yeah, absolutely, Michelle. So it's interesting because as we go through that continuum of growth, the final goal, that end result that we're all looking for is we're looking for self-determination. That self-awareness, self-advocacy are both the foundational elements of self-determination, knowing what you want, knowing who you are, knowing how to get what you need and what you want. So when we are looking at the future and we're looking at goals and we're looking at what we want from our life or in our life, figuring out how to get there calls for a plan. So as you can see here, to live independently, we're breaking that down. I need to be able to self-medicate. I need to be able to have this support system in relationships with people who can support me. A job would be helpful. We're going through this plan of how can I meet my ultimate goal. So I want to ask you all to think about if you thought about your future goals, or when you did think about your future goals, what were some of the decisions, the important decisions that you had to make? Was that to live independently or live at home, to go to school or find a job, own a house, live in an apartment? So these are all extremely important decisions as we go through our lives. And meeting our goals in life requires us to know a little bit about ourselves, sometimes a lot about ourselves, our strengths, challenges, obstacles that we anticipate, and our support systems, which we'll talk a little bit more in detail later. And then the steps to take along the way. So as we advocate, we're advocating in school. This may have to do with disclosure, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. We may need to advocate in the grocery store. In my own case, I needed to advocate in my own driveway this morning and get what I needed to be able to get to my next part of my day. So all of these things are connected, and as we go through today in the presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about how each of those things plays a part in making sure that we are executing our plan and doing it with grace and with success at the end.
I love that, with grace. You're absolutely right. So I want to play something real fast, Crystal, because sometimes we say a lot, right? And we don't realize how many steps go into making a decision or how to coach that student. We don't see the bigger picture. So I want to throw something at you. Would you mind being in a hot seat for me today?
Sure.
All right, and thank you. So I can play my little game. So let's look at this scenario, and we're going to call it Melanie's journey. Someone with a high IQ, diagnosed as an individual with ASD early in high school, very verbal, but high anxiety. So we've seen that before, right? Those perfectionist tendencies, like, I did all my homework, I just didn't hand it in because I didn't know if it was going to be an A. Well, this person enters into a small college close to home, freshman, sophomore year, they're going okay. There's some struggles, but we're managing. A lot of parent support there. And she passes. Junior year, crash. Tons of those what ifs take over, right? And with that anxiety. So if we think about bringing this back again to self-advocacy, what kind of things do you think that you might need in this situation? What would your first steps be in helping this young adult self-advocate?
Yeah, it's interesting, Michelle, because each person is different. But with Melanie's journey here, I think where I would start with Melanie is just to have a discussion and a conversation with her, to sit down with Melanie and to ask her, what are some of the what ifs that you are facing right now? Help her to really visualize those what ifs so that they're not kind of stuck in herself and she's ruminating on those, but she's able to really get them out so that we can discuss a little bit further. We want to learn more about her experience. We want to build context. We want to understand, because the best that we can understand Melanie, the more we're able to help her problem solve in this scenario. So I may be asking her things about what are the what ifs? What have you really liked about college? What's been going well? What hasn't been going well? What's been a challenge? Through learning this context, we're able to better help Melanie identify resources that are specific to her challenges and bring attention to those positive things she's identified. We all know kind of when it's a preferred activity, there's a little bit more of that motivation and that desire to go, to face challenges, to overcome obstacles. So helping Melanie to see what is going well, and then leading Melanie in some perspective taking, which we'll talk about a little bit here in the future of the presentation. But regarding what are her what ifs and visualizing what are the possible outcomes of those what ifs, helping her to see that there are outcomes that may present challenges and there are also outcomes that could really be positive for her. So this is all, as we talked about a little bit ago, was the building a plan. This is a great place to use that bubble sheet there and to make a plan for Melanie's journey and what that's going to look like. The most important part here is to support Melanie's decisions and advocacy in this situation by helping her to be more aware of what's going on in this case.
Wow. All right, thank you. That was a great overview, right?
It's like, more than you asked for, but hey, we're going to help Melanie succeed here.
And right, that's right. And it's apparent that you may have come across a few of these students, Crystal, in your time in CIP. So I appreciate you sharing that experience and how you would support that student. I'm going to jump into a few bubbles as we talked about, because we've identified that there's 6 of them. There's 6 that parents or professionals can use in a means to help that student learn how to self-advocate. So as an overview, when we look at the very first one right above, we're looking at self-awareness. That's the one we talked about a few minutes ago. This is that one that encourages the student to reflect on their strengths and weaknesses and to identify those areas that they may need additional support to accommodate. This can help them better understand their needs and communicate to others. So that's where I always say we start. We're going to go with self-awareness and then move forward. Now it's acceptance. All right, I'm aware. I'm aware that I have dysgraphia. Now what? Okay, well, we're going to teach the student how to communicate their needs effectively, how to ask for help when needed, how to navigate that environment. For example, if there's a disability in the office and the student doesn't know how to even get items that they need, who are they going to go to for that? Are they going to the office manager? Are they just asking a peer next to them? How do they approach them? But again, I need to be acceptant of what I need so that I can clearly communicate that. Then I'm going to move on to assertiveness, right? I have to practice assertiveness. Help the student practice assertiveness by advocating for themselves in different situations. So if I take my child to the store and maybe I just went to Starbucks, I'm going to ask the child, I need you to order for me. Can you ask for, and I know there's some crazy names, right? I need a mocha chocolate latte, with three pumps of organic something in there. And they're going to laugh, but we need to get them to start talking more, to be in front of the unknown. It's going to be fearful, but you're there to support. This is the time to practice, request for things, because you're not going to be there when they're in their college class with their professor. You're not going to be able to help them speak up in class. Then we're going to slow it on and we're going to say, okay, now that we got that down, let's foster some independence. Encourage the student to take responsibility for their own education. Let them set goals, managing their time effectively, seeking out resources and support. Are they going to do it right the first time? Probably not. But again, they're still in your home. It's your opportunity, or they're your client. They're coming to your office. It's your opportunity to coach into this. Let them take some risks so you have something to coach on. Then we can figure out, all right, some things just aren't working. And you may always need to have some supports that you can always go to whether you're going to donkey roll. We'll talk about more later what a donkey roll means. But how are you going to find the right people, whether that's peers, mentors, professionals, that are going to guide you in the right direction, right? We know a lot of our young adults today depend on social media and influencers that are guiding them. But how can we put the right supports in front of them that are guiding them for the good reasons? And then we can't leave out technology. That is a big component of our lives today. So how do we utilize that to help with self-advocacy? Now we can for scheduling. I know even for this presentation, first thing when I wake up in the morning, I look at my schedule and I tell Siri, set an alarm for 1 o'clock, set an alarm for 3 o'clock, set an alarm for 4:30. And throughout the day, my phone goes off, and that's what prompts me to know that I have a meeting or an important reminder that I have something, a deadline approaching. There's setting up communication channels. That could be through email, text messages. We have so many opportunities today through Zoom, such we are right now. And now we can also ask AI, artificial intelligence. And I want to dive into that a little bit more later. So I guess to sum this up, I would encourage students to self-reflect on their experience and identify what is working well, and then kind of what needs improvement. Again, that's going to take you back to being self-aware, right? I have to self-reflect on what I'm honestly saying I need to improve in. And this is going to help them continue to develop those self-advocacy skills throughout their journey. So now let's dive a little bit deeper into these components. Crystal, can you break it down first with the self-awareness for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're looking at self-awareness, we're looking at the ability to articulate our strengths and weaknesses, to understand how we're behaving and how that is both making us feel and the people around us feel. And at times, this can be difficult, right? I think we've all faced that difficulty in having a self-awareness of where we're at, what we're doing, how we're acting, how we're feeling. And so to kick us off in talking about this, I'm going to ask you, Michele, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Oh, yeah. Have you ever been given a compliment by a complete stranger?
I am not well with accepting compliments.
Right. So we're going to talk about that a little bit because it's part of self-awareness. When we are self-aware, we're able to respond a little bit better to feedback. We're able to accept criticism. We're able to accept compliments. There's a couple of ways, I think, Michele, that when people are given a compliment by a complete stranger, there's a couple of ways they might respond. One of those is my most frequent response, which is to recoil in horror at the awkwardness of the situation, make a self-deprecating remark. There are others who might think to themselves, you nailed it, I look great. So this can be an indicator of your feelings about yourself not aligning with the perceptions of those people that are around you. So I'm going to tell a quick story here about, I won't tell you how long ago it was, but I remember when I was a high school band director, and I posted a flyer around the school advertising open auditions for students to perform the Star Spangled Banner at the home basketball games. Students were excited, a lot came to audition, but there was one that I was particularly excited to hear because there was a buzz around the school about how incredible their voice was. Their parents always talked up their voice. I was so excited. So the day came. I'm sure you know where this is going. She could not hold a tune if I gave her $1 million. So unfortunately, providing constructive feedback to her was very difficult because she didn't have an honest awareness and assessment of her own skills, and those around her had not been honest with her as well. So if the people around her had been honest with her, she may have developed a better self-awareness there, been able to seek support with a vocal coach, practiced more for the audition. So these are some very teachable moments. We'll talk about teachable moments a little bit more as we go through the presentation, but it's these teachable moments and these organic moments of feedback to ourselves and to others, especially from those we trust, that are crucial to building self-awareness. So this awareness is linked to our feelings, thoughts, and actions, of course.
That was amazing. Thank you, Crystal. And I think now let's go deeper then. Let's go now into that assessing that self-awareness.
Great. So as you assess your self-awareness, there are multiple ways to do this. There are formal ways, informal ways, feedback that you get from others. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the, in the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about finding what tools you can use to assess yourself. But as you take these assessments, these might be in specific areas such as career assessments, assessments for college. Maybe you're taking a personality assessment and you learn something about how you react in certain situations. These better help you understand your strengths, your challenges, your preferred ways of working and thinking, and all of these help you advocate better. So this cartoon here, the boy here says, I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation that explains why I didn't do my homework. So take the cartoon, for example. The student here has likely spent a good 90 minutes creating a PowerPoint on why he doesn't believe these math problems are relevant to his future, instead of taking the 15 minutes to complete those 5 math problems. So this would be an important time for him to advocate that he thinks outside of the box. He can talk to his teacher about what that looks like. It's not just a really productive procrastination on his part. It can be through self-awareness and moment of advocacy and demonstrating competencies through other means. So this could be verbal, PowerPoint, videotape, etc.
You know what? We sometimes forget that there's so many multiple means, right? That universal design of learning. We get so caught up in what we're comfortable with, we forget that there's so many other opportunities. But we also have to remind others that there's opportunities and they need to give us that chance. So maybe, Crystal, tell us a little bit more about those tools you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So the tools on this page, and as you look through here, you're going to see a lot of this is tailored to academics. So I'm going to actually give you an example of how these tools can be utilized for a student to plan their way through the beginning steps of choosing a college. So, and these tools that you're seeing here, don't worry about writing them down, about looking them up right now. Sharona did send a PowerPoint presentation in PDF form, so you should be able to access these as well after our webinar today. So let's say that Johnny is going in and he is taking some of these tools. He's learning more about himself. He's learning more about what he likes, what he dislikes. As he's taking these tools, he's building a picture about what he wants for his academic future. These are some of the things he might learn through these tools. So number one, I'm looking for a small college because I see contact with professors, opportunities to get involved, and a lot of athletic activities. I really like sports. The size of the college is really important to me because I don't want to get lost. I want to feel like I'm seen while I'm there. It's not imperative, but I'd prefer a college with many faith-based students. Any location is fine with me, but I'm specifically looking for a college, preferably in the Northwest. I do like the rain. I'm looking for a liberal arts college and sciences college because I'm still deciding on what career and degree I want. I just don't know yet, so I want to get started on a well-rounded education. It's important for me to have a balance between academics and social life. I don't want a pressure cooker college. I'm already anxious. If I go, I don't want to feel stressed all the time. I should pay more attention to colleges that either cost less or where I might be eligible for a type of scholarship. I want to go to a college that cares about the environment like I do. And my classes should focus on subjects relevant to the career I've chosen. So just by taking these personality tests, these academic tests, college search tests, these are ways that you can learn more about yourself to build a really clear picture of what you need and what you want from the future.
I wish I took more of those before I went to college.
I do too.
That really broke that down, right? And now colleges, I know, are putting so much more online where you can take the virtual tours with the assessment and really make sure that you're reaching all of these different things that you talked about to make sure that it's the right place. Yeah, it's a big investment, right? It's a big choice.
For sure.
So I'm going to move on to acceptance for a moment. With those tools that you said, now I'm looking at this diagram, right, Crystal? So I like the saying, shoot for the stars, but be mindful of the obstacles. A little bit of twist from the moon, but there's those obstacles that do jump out at us. So we need to ensure that we're giving the students opportunities to make choices. Sometimes we may make a poor choice, and that just happens, right? We don't always make the best choice in the beginning, but that's what our support team does. It gives that little nudge, and it allows us to routinely return to a journey that is going to be productive. So many times we look at this first diagram and we say, that's what I want. And we assume it's a straight line and I can just zoom and I'm going to get there and nothing's going to get in my way because I'm determined and I'm motivated and I'm young and full of the world. But that adult will come in and maybe that's our support team and they remind us that it's not a straight line. There's going to be ups and downs. There's the reality check. So we want to prepare them early on for making decisions and letting them see that not all of them go well. Some do, and that's great, and that helps us build our confidence at an early age. So we have some tips and tricks for things that we can start doing to make very small goals or small choices and increase as they progress. So if we're talking to somebody at elementary school level, we might say, you get to pick out your shirt every day this week. And maybe they wore something hot pink with orange or whatever their choice was, it's okay because it was their choice and they had an opportunity to see what kind of feedback they were going to get and how that felt for them. In the middle school, we might say, decide on your homework time. Now, homework's not a choice, right? Because we want them to do the homework, so we're not giving them the choice of whether they do it or not, but we are giving them a choice by saying, you choose the time that works best for you. So I would like you to do it as soon as you come home from school because it's easy to get it out of the way, but maybe you go on at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock after dinner, but you make that choice as long as you get it done. High school, we might tell them, hey, now it's time to run your own IEP meeting. Because you know what, someday you're going to have to advocate for yourself. Today, I get to sit at the table with you and I can guide you, but I want you to run the meeting. I want you to be in charge. I want the staff and teachers to look at you and ask you what you want. And then when we get to college, right, we might set a goal of graduating with an associate's degree in 2 years. Yeah, that's difficult. And life is going to throw you a bunch of surprises. You're going to have breakups. There's going to be deaths in the family. There's going to be possibly unemployment. So many things can get thrown at us. And you may need to even set multiple plans to achieve those goals. But the important part is you're allowing them to start making decisions with support. And it gives them an opportunity to experience reality. And that's what we want for everyone, right? We want them to build confidence along the way, knowing that we're there to support them. So what we were going to suggest is that when you start making these goals, make it small and then build upon it. So I might even say, hey, mom and dad, let me wake up over the next week without an alarm clock. And you might say, okay, we're going to give this a try. Instead of saying, oh, I know you're going to be late and I don't want you to get detention and you know, I got to get to work, so I got to make sure you're up. Let them get detention. That's okay. They're still in school. That's the time where you want to be able to make some mistakes because you have so many support systems in place to make sure that they're not truly failing, but it gets a little uncomfortable, and uncomfortable is when we get to learn. So what happens, right? When we do that, we're allowing decision-making, independent thinking, that promotes independence and increases confidence. But more importantly, having the students start to make decisions builds stronger advocacy skills. That's when it's going to start to kick in. That's when they're going to get to practice. So Crystal, I want to pause on this slide for one more second and just say, soak that in, right? Because in this experience, the most difficult for parents is to not rush it. You can't rush the experiences. You need to go along for that journey, go along for the ride. And every journey looks different. No two are the same. But I think my biggest and honestly, my favorite saying that I always do kind of come back to is that be careful though, because the more we enable, we honestly disable. Think about that, right? If we enable, we disable. So we do need to let go a little bit and let them make those choices.
That makes a lot of sense, Michele, because as we look toward self-advocacy, we are looking at empowering that person. We're coaching that person to be more empowered in their own life, to make their own decisions. And that empowerment and that control of self are so important when we're promoting self-advocacy and independence as a whole. So I've compiled a couple of tips here. They may be repeats from Michele, but they're so important to remember that whenever possible, provide that choice. So oftentimes we stick to providing a good choice and a bad choice. That's too easy. It's too easy. In life, we're not always going to have a great choice and a choice that's a little bit less great. So when you are providing choices, it's not always about that good and bad. It's about providing two choices that are present, or two options that are present, whether they're non-preferred tasks or it's something that they love, but providing them the empowerment to make their own decision. So if you are providing choice in two things that are non-preferred, you might be saying to your student, you need to take a math or a public speaking this term, but you need to take one. I know you don't really like either subject, but they'll both need to be completed for your degree. Which would you like to tackle first? So we already know that the student doesn't want to take either one of those classes, but they're going to need to make a decision. And now when they make their decision, they know, I made this decision. I want to do this first because of this reason that's important to me. So even if they're non-preferred tasks, providing those options is so important. The other piece is allowing mistakes to be made and without judgment. And I say that as a key piece of this, allowing mistakes to be made without judgment. So making mistakes in a safe and supportive environment can be a wonderful way for our students to learn and grow. And the third here is to praise decision making. So it sounds straightforward, but like Michele previously mentioned, this can be a challenge when we as professionals or parents or friends feel like we would have made a better decision.
Thanks, Crystal, because yeah, giving up control is the hardest. We never want, whether it's even a friend or a child, we don't want them to fail, but it's almost part of the process, right? We've learned that. We've seen that so many times and over that unless we let them make those mistakes, there's not a lot of time for them to come in and try and do it better. Right. So maybe we have to talk a little bit then about assertiveness.
Absolutely. So there's a continuum of assertiveness here, right? We all hear the terms passive, passive-aggressive, assertive. So when we're looking at this continuum, seeing that there's passive, assertive, and aggressive, what you can see here is that assertive really falls right in the middle, right? We're being considerate of other people while we're asserting our needs. So as we go into self-advocacy, we know that self-advocacy requires a certain level of assertiveness to stand up and say what you need. And assertiveness requires a balance between stating your wants and needs and respecting and understanding that the other person also has the right to their wants and needs. So you don't always get what you want, but open communication can help find a solution that works best for all parties. So a few tips here for practicing encouraging assertive communication. And let's face it, we can all use these tips. So the first is to clearly state what you need as opposed to making demands. I refer to this as pitch the facts, ditch the attitude. So take the example of the car parked in my driveway this morning. Kindly approaching the neighbors to see if they know who the owner is, that's going to elicit a different kind of response than if I stand in my driveway shaking my fists and yelling for the owner and threatening to have the car towed. Right, I have the same need, but the way that I express that need will oftentimes determine what my outcome is.
That is great. And I loved your saying there, pitch the facts, ditch the attitude. That was pretty cool. Very good. So I'm going to bring something funny, or at least to me it is. In fact, I have this printed out and it's on my desk. And if you read this, it says, we're trying to reconcile her need for independence with our ability to run her life better than she does. Truth be told, this is one of my favorite cartoons, and it's not just because I think it's funny, but honestly, because it's me. As my son just graduated high school and he's getting ready to go to college, I'm kind of pretty ashamed to share how I struggled with not being able to do everything for him. And it kind of caused me a ton of anxiety, mostly because I felt like I knew better, right? I knew when things were getting done and I could check it off my box. And I'm not even assuming that he created his own boxes. I tell you, it was hard. Crystal, I couldn't. There was days where we were in screaming matches because he had to tell me to back off because I would come home and I had my list. Did you sign it right?
To be assertive.
How did you write the email? Did you use a salutation? Did you say thank you? Does it sound like a text message? You know, and he would just be like, stop, mom, enough. It's sad. It really was sad. So I would like, well, I guess my recommendation in this case would be stop second guessing, right? There's a time when you really have to give trust in that process. And I could tell you that he did not write always the best emails because I sometimes checked or asked to be BC'd on it. And I wanted to give that coaching tip. And I did have to pause. I had to pause multiple times and sit back and say, okay, how am I going, if someone said it to me, how am I going to accept that feedback? Am I really ready for that? And I quickly learned that by me, and I was enabling, wanting to do everything, I took away his independence. And it became the norm that he would come home and be like, did you send out that email? Or, you know, did you apply for this for me? And that's when it kind of hit me was, wait a second. And I'm getting angry now because I'm thinking, I have a job to do. I can't do all of your work. Well, I set that up. I took on that role. I took away his independence. So I would say be real careful of how much you want to do, because you will not foster independence. You'll do the actual opposite. You will enable. They will rely on you for everything. So give them an opportunity. Just be that support system. Be careful that once you do teach them, that they're not using aggressiveness, because they'll go right from, sometimes families, you're going to see them, when you teach them how to self-advocate, it sounds a little aggressive because it's full pendulum swing. They go all the way to the other end. So that's when you got to come back in and coach and get them to work on how to be assertive, but in a proper way, that's in a right self-advocacy way, so that you're not, you're being assertive and not aggressive. And that's the big thing that we want to remind you. It's assertiveness, not aggressiveness. So Crystal, can you tell us about support networks that maybe we can jump into that could help with this?
Yeah, and it's a great transition too, because as we're talking about how the family supports, how you as parents support the student in their self-advocacy, the support network is important. I've always referred to the support network as a trampoline, right? So as a student falls off that high wire, there's no way that we're going to just catch them and let them sit there in that safety net. We're going to bounce them straight back up and help support them in moving forward. And I think what Michelle's referring to there is sometimes when we get a little bit too controlling, or having too much oversight over the decisions of our students from a professional standpoint and a personal standpoint. We can oftentimes just catch them when they fall. We can make those decisions for them. We can make sure that they're comfortable, but most learning comes in that area of discomfort, and advocating and learning to advocate for what you need and you want comes from that area of discomfort sometimes. So the support network that you see here, and these are just some examples of what a support network might be to this specific particular student. that's really composed of people identified by the person, who serves the purpose of providing mental, emotional, social, financial, practical support, etc. So this network continues to grow throughout your lifetime. It's just that the importance of each one in your life is somewhat circumstantial, right? So your professor might be more important to you during your academic career, but they also might move into a different role in that support network when you go to find a job and you reach out to them for that or that letter of reference. So I want to, as we look through here, we have a support network that's made up of a therapist, friends, school, healthcare, family, community, your employer, etc. I'm going to ask you, Michele, can you think of one person in many of our students' support network that isn't an actual human being?
Oh, yes. For me, it's Siri. For a lot of our students, it's Alexa or Google. Yep. But yeah.
Right. So times are changing, right? And it's important to know that we all are part of this support system, but we can help the student to advocate for support in other ways too, and to add to their support system people or things that they didn't know would be so supportive of them. So Alexa for setting alarms, Google for looking up recipes if they're not sure what to cook. We use these on a daily basis, and so I've really started to include these in this network of support that our students can go to. So this seems like a great time to quickly remind everybody about the donkey rule. And if you haven't heard about the donkey rule, imagine that you are faced with a decision that you need to make and you aren't sure how to proceed, right? You have this support network of people around you, and you're gonna find 5 of your closest confidants, closest people in this circle of support, and you're gonna ask them for their input. If they all say it's a horse, it's not a donkey. Okay, so utilize the support network and encourage students to utilize their support network when they have difficult decisions to make. This is going to help them advocate and be more self-aware.
I love the donkey rule. One of my favorites. Always remind people to go back to that. So Crystal, I also, we have your support network there. Do you think that sometimes we don't always know the right things? We don't really know sometimes, right, what our barrier is, but then when we figure it out, do we know how to ask for the right supports? Or do we just say like, this is hard, I can't do it?
Yeah, and that's a big piece of number one, learning to be self-aware as we go kind of back to the beginning of this, but also to be able to map out, do I actually know what the issue is here? And do I know how to ask for what I need, right? It's interesting because I was observing a transition group recently at CIP Long Beach, and we were asking the students, what do you want from life? I mean, seems like a simple question, right? No, but we were asking them, what do you want from life? And it's just these wheels going, right? Like we get a few answers regarding money, a good-looking spouse, a lot of blank stares. But when we reframed that question to ask students, what are the 5 things you don't want in your life? We received a laundry list of items ranging from, I don't want bullies in my life. I don't want traffic in my life. I don't want to wash my dishes by hand, right? So something, sometimes advocating can be as much about like expressing what you want and need as about expressing what you don't want and don't need. So it's the same as what's going well and what's not going well. It's sometimes easier for us to identify our challenges than our successes. So I want to give that tip as well as we go through this page to be able to guide a student through that and to help them reframe. Everybody thinks differently, everybody processes differently. So as we're looking at this grid, this is a great example of how to receive support and advocate for support in the academic setting. So I'll talk about the first one here. The learning barrier on the left being, sometimes I get anxious during a long class, and that anxiety prevents me from paying attention. The request of the student, and this is in their advocacy, is I really could utilize some short breaks to be able to refocus. And then understanding why what you're asking for is helpful, right? We want to be the student who needs something, not necessarily the needy student. So why is this helpful to me? If I can leave the classroom for a moment, I can regather and come back feeling more focused, right? We're not taking short breaks just because it's a break. We're taking a short break for a purpose, and then we're resuming our objective. So this grid, I love, can be used for so many different things when we're advocating. I encourage you to look at this in the PDF when Sharona sends it out, break it down, try something as simple as doing my laundry, right? So what are some barriers I might have to doing my laundry? What do I request? And why would this be helpful? Right? I have a hard time really visualizing the difference between whether something should go in the lights or the darks. Okay, so there might be photos above the washer and the dryer that show and demonstrate a picture of darks and lights in laundry speak. So anyways, I encourage you to utilize this tool in a variety of different ways. It's a great way to visualize the support that we need.
Thank you, Crystal. Thanks for rounding out that support network and why that's important, as well as this tool. So we have one more when we talked about those 6 steps, right? So our last one was technology. And today I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence, because just trying to stay on top of the trends, what is being introduced to our young adults at this age, or younger even. And it's scary, right? Because we don't know enough about it. We're hearing it all the time, but we're not sure how it's going to be helpful, or is it going to be hurtful? And I'll be honest, in my opinion, there's probably a balance. It can go either way, depending on how you're going to use it. But I want to talk about 4 helpful ways that I in research found that AI would help with self-advocacy. So first, it would be that personalized learning. So AI can be used to personalize the learning experience for each student. And remember, I said personalize. So what it does, really, it analyzes data on a student's learning style, their interests, their strengths and weaknesses, kind of talking about what Crystal, when she was saying, doing different assessments. There's AI that will do assessments for you and then provide you a personalized recommendation for learning materials. Here's your best study strategies. Here's even a given career path that you should take based on your areas of interest. And this can help students feel more engaged and motivated in their learning, which in turn really should help them be able to advocate for themselves more effectively, because they know what they need based on what AI is telling them on all of their interests and their input. The second area is communication and collaboration. So AI now can empower communication tools to help students stay connected with their teachers, their peers, their support networks. We have even homeschool students feeling much more connected to the brick and mortar, because this is bridging the gap through the different technologies of how they communicate. So some quick answers to that. So while collaborative platforms can facilitate group projects and peer-to-peer feedback, by improving the communication collaboration, AI is actually helping the students build the skills they need to advocate for themselves effectively. So I'm going to keep bringing it back to self-advocacy when I talk about it. My third one here is going to be learning analytics. So AI has that ability to analyze vast amounts of data on the student performance to identify trends and patterns. And that might be sometimes missed, honestly, by human educators. So for an example, AI can flag students who are struggling with a particular skill. We can even break it all the way down to a specific math skill, and then give them strategies on how to improve that one little area of weakness that's going to be a huge asset later on as they're trying to build upon a math skill. So something as small as that, using analytics, is huge. And it can go one or two ways, right? It could help the person who's struggling, but it also can identify that person who's performing way above grade level. And we don't want to lose them either. We don't want anyone to fall through the cracks. And sometimes it's that above grade level student that is getting bored and they're unmotivated because we're not reaching their potential. So that information can really help students self-advocate by giving them concrete evidence to support the requests for additional help or more challenging assignments. Whatever they might need, they're going to be able to say, this is why, because AI is going to give them that analytics. And lastly, it's really that accessibility too. So AI can help make learning more accessible for students with disabilities or other special needs. For example, we like to use a lot, I use a lot, text to speech, speech to text, but either way. Students with vision or hearing impairments, they have adaptive learning technologies for that. They can adjust the pace, the content of instruction. We have a lot more opportunities today to meet the students' needs, and providing tools such as AI can help students advocate for themselves and access that education to be able to succeed in any area. So overall, I really think that AI has the potential to revolutionize the way students learn and advocate for themselves by providing personalized learning, improving communication and collaboration, those analytics, enhancing accessibility. AI is going to be able to help students more self-aware. It's going to empower the learner to make choices. And I'll just leave with a note of saying that is the good. Is there going to be some ugly that we're going to see? Most likely, right? Because everything can be used for a different reason. And I know we're nervous that students will be able to cheat, or, you know, they'll have their papers done by AI. But let's focus on the good and how it's going to help. So I'm going to conclude with my slide will be that problem solving slide, and being that sleuth investigator. And this is what I'm going to ask all of you today, that if you really could take the time and visualize or really recognize, right, that you just got all this information dumped on you about whether it's AI was something new for you today, or some of the tools and tricks that we gave you. We want to conclude with the importance of stepping in and assisting when needed. Crystal made a lot of great, really 4 or 5 different stories on talking about how important it was to allow them to fail, to allow them to struggle a little bit, and providing that feedback when necessary. And then as a parent, understanding when it's time to let go, to understand that, you know, all feedback is not accepted, but it's offered. And it's offered by you as a powerful tool that you can provide them and you can support them. One other area that I like to use in my sleuth investigating when I'm trying to prove a point with a student is I'll ask them sometimes, would you mind if I videotape you? Whether it be in this conversation or as I watch you socializing with someone else, and then we can privately watch that videotape and I can show you your body language or your choice of words or your mannerisms. And we'll continue to practice that over and over, but sometimes they need to see it, right? We can't always just hear it. We can't read it. We need to sometimes see it. So if we're hitting all of those things and we're giving the students enough information to be able to honestly, and I say honestly, right? Honestly determine what they need, because this is their area of weakness, you are going to make them 100% better self-advocator moving forward from today. So I'm just gonna pop on you, Crystal, and you can sum up what you feel.
Sure. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here with the reminder that teachable moments are so special and they're crucial to self-advocacy. So being able to take those unplanned opportunities that arise as a parent, professional, friend, this is the ideal chance for us to offer insight into a student and their own self-awareness, or into a situation, and helping them face that uncomfortable state that they're in by helping to teach them how to pop out of that and how to solve. So these teachable moments can push students out of their comfort zone. And like Michele said, I'm a big advocate for that. Not so far that they aren't learning something or that they're losing their energy and their enthusiasm, but so far that they feel challenged to fix that obstacle that they're facing. So making sure that we are all utilizing those moments and we're helping to teach in that moment that there's a better way around this and there's a better way to self-advocate. So going into the last couple slides here, I want to give you some resources to take away with you. So our teachable moments are unplanned. The academic tools and supports that we provide in the next couple of slides, they do help prepare students for success with self-advocacy. So wrapping up the presentation and opening the floor for questions, we've added about 3 slides here full of tips, tricks, accommodations that may be available, resources to access when you're self-advocating for your needs or supporting a student with self-advocacy. And these will all be included in the follow-up email from Sharona. So I know I'm speaking on behalf of Michele and I both, and we have sincerely enjoyed sharing this information and talking with each other and with you today. Hope you've gained insight into self-advocacy and some ways that you can support and encourage this skill with yourself and or your students. So thank you so much for being here today.
And thank you, Crystal, for co-presenting with me. That was fun. And now we'll have an opportunity to shoot it back to Sharona for some Q&A.
Yes, thank you. We don't have much time, but we do have a couple of questions that came in, so we'll hopefully be able to get to them. And also, I wanted to mention that if you do not receive the PowerPoint in the follow-up email, just email me at the email listed below, ssommer@cipworldwide.org, and I'll get that to you. So one of the questions that came up, and we've heard this question before, is what if you have a student that doesn't really learn from their mistakes, just makes the same mistakes again and again, and just does not learn from them? So how do you create those teachable moments if they're not open to that?
I mean, first I would recommend persistence because sometimes it does take time, and we learn when we're ready as well, and that can be so frustrating. I can understand and empathize with that. So that persistence and that non-judgmental space, so important. But I also recommend very direct communication, that assertive communication on both sides. So again, we talked assertiveness was a two-sided respect of each other. So being direct with that student on what steps they should take and can take.
Yeah, I agree. And so not enough can be said for really breaking something down into the nitty gritty. So you failed a test. Backwards plan the entire thing. Why did we fail the test? Did we fail the test because we didn't do our homework? But when I say backwards plan, okay, now we're going to say test is on Friday. What are we doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Like, you need to give them every little bitty scenario that you need to, that's going to happen, the solution to how they're going to help with that problem, that's solving that problem, until they can have the confidence and independence to do it on their own. But using broad words of, you failed because I know you didn't do your homework, you didn't study, that's not going to help them, right? So we need to be able, as the caregiver, the client, whoever we are in this team of professionals coming in and supporting that student, you have to break it down and then give them the opportunity to do it on their own. And if they don't do well, then we come back and then we say that. So I gave you the opportunity to do it on your own. You didn't do well. Try and take some of my suggestions now. And then we just, we have to spitball. We have to keep trying different things. It's not going to be the same for every student.
And praise, right? Find the smallest thing to say you did this well, and also, right? So, yeah. And instead of but definitely, yeah, praise the littlest things. It helps to feel good about yourself when you're learning this skill.
I love that. That's great advice. And it kind of ties into also the supporting versus enabling, right? I mean, it's definitely part of that, allowing them to fail and learning from those opportunities as well. And I just wanted to plug in our other webinars that focus on topics like enabling versus supporting, which you can find at CIP, www.cipworldwide.org/events. And you can see all of our past webinars. And we do have some great topics there. Enabling is a huge topic that we definitely understand. It's very challenging for some families. And Michele, I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing your story of how sometimes you just have to go through it and learn, and there's that aha moment that kind of faces you. So I appreciate it. So thank you all so much for everything. There was a lot of information here, and I will be sending out the presentation, and if you don't receive it, please contact me for that. And we look forward to seeing you next time. So thank you again, Michele and Crystal, for your experience and your knowledge, and for sharing your content with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all the attendees.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.